Good afternoon, good evening, Bigfoot enthusiasts. Hi, I am not Scott from Squatch America.
All right, folks. Ooh, wow, that's loud. I can hear you back here. Okay, there we go. Hello. Okay, so, all right. Just FYI, we are live on Facebook and YouTube at this moment.
And by continuing to sit here and enjoy this presentation, you are consenting to be seen on those social media platforms. Informed consent already done.
Okay, we're good. All right. Well, hello, Bigfoot enthusiasts. I'm Scott from Squatch America.
And I'm Hannah, domestic goddess in the paddy wagon.
All right. And you're watching the Squatch America channel right now. That's for our live people, by the way.
And before we continue this scintillating presentation, we have our intro.
Okay, play it. All right, well, thank you all for coming this evening. And what you're about to see is either a whole bunch of brilliance or a whole bunch of bullshit. You decide at the very end.
You just said a word.
I said a word on TV I shouldn't have. Okay.
That's okay, they've heard it worse.
So, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a presentation this evening about my 25 years of Bigfooting, what I've found, and what I think. Squatch America is a scientifically based research group dedicated to the discovery and the culture and lifestyle of the Great American North American Great Ape. The reason I say that is because Bigfoot to me is no longer a question. And as a cultural anthropologist, I am now studying the culture of these things, not trying to prove their existence. And I have a theory why we're not going to prove their existence anyway. Why is that picture gone? That's weird. Anyway, so in my 25 years, I do a whole lot of Bigfoot conferences and stuff, and I've met some of the big names, like that's Jeff Meldrum, that's me and Jeff, that's me and Bobo from Finding Bigfoot. Actually, do you know how he's kind of goofy on the show? That's Bobo in real life. Okay.
Great human being.
Great human being. There's Cliff Berrickman, another great human being, and that's Bryce from the new TV show Expedition Bigfoot, which I was the technical advisor for that TV show on the Travel Channel. So basically, I was the guy behind the scenes pointing them, that's where you go, this is what you do, that's blah, blah, blah. Okay. Oops. There's a picture missing. I don't know why. Right there was a picture with me and a guy by the name of Keith Crabtree. Anybody ever see the movie, the old 1960s movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek? No one? Okay, all right. You know, hey, Travis Crabtree, remember that song in there? Well, Keith Crabtree is still alive, and I got to go Bigfooting with him last year. Keith was the guy in the movie who they put in the Bigfoot suit. So he was actually Bigfoot. Okay, so these guys here are all TV celebrities, basically. Okay? These guys down here are actual Bigfooters. I mean, Cliff is pretty good. Bobo's pretty good. Dr. Jeff's been in it for a long time, but they spend a lot of time on TV and not a lot of time in the woods. These guys down here are the guys that spend in the woods. If you don't know this guy here, his name's Mike Waldy. He runs a group called the Texas Bigfoot Rangers in Texas. Okay? And this girl here is Shelly Covington, Montana. She has been Bigfooting for a very long time. And she is hooked up with that TV show called Monster Quest, the producer of that. And she is doing the world's largest DNA study on Bigfoot right now. This right here is Shane Corson. Shane, good friend of mine. We've done a couple of Bigfoot conferences together. But Shane runs this thing in the state of Washington called the Olympic Project. Anybody ever heard of that? They have the largest amount of trail cameras in the woods. I think he has like 1,200 trail cameras in the woods at any given time. I don't know how he keeps track of them all. But last year they found a nesting area that was phenomenal, and Dr. Jeff went and checked it out. So that's kind of my background here. So I have a thing about belief. When people say I believe in Bigfoot, I don't believe in Bigfoot. I leave belief up to religion. I'm a scientist by training, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what turned me onto Bigfoot and the evidence that I've found that proved to me that Bigfoot's real and it's not a myth or belief. One, I'm an anthropologist. My expertise is in Native American culture. I've studied with Native American tribes all over the United States. I particularly spent almost a year and a half with the Miwok tribe in Central California, in the Yosemite Valley area. I was their archaeologist for about a year and a half. We were trying to, the Miwok tribe got lumped in with the Paiutes, and they weren't given their own treaty with the U.S. government. And I spent a year and a half trying to prove the difference between a Miwok and a Paiute, and looking up their history and finding their basically how long they had been in the Yosemite Valley as opposed to the Paiutes. So I spent a year and a half looking at petroglyphs and pictographs and finding native legends. And I came across a pictograph that I had never seen before. And I asked the elder of the tribe, I said, "What is that symbol?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yayali." Well, in their language, Yayali means hairy man. And I said, "So do you mean Bigfoot?" And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "So is Bigfoot real?" He looked at me and goes, "Are you stupid?" Yes. And walked off like, there's no doubt, right? Well, since that time, I've contacted over 75 tribes in the nation. All 75 tribes have a Bigfoot legend. All 75 tribes have names for these things. So if there's that much history, there's got to be something to it. Some of these petroglyphs and pictographs that I've found are over 1,200 years old. That's way before the white man got here. So this legend isn't something new. It's old. We'll get into that a little bit later. So footprints, photos, and the archaeology. That's what got me into this and proved to me that Bigfoot's real. Now, where I spent most of my time, I'm from Oregon, about there, a little town called Baker City, Oregon. It's in the middle of the Blue Mountains. The Blue Mountain Range it goes up into Idaho and into Montana that way. The Blue Mountain Range is the only range in the United States that connects the Cascade Mountains, which goes into the Sierras up and down California here, and the Rocky Mountains over here. This is the only mountain range that connects the two. There is a long history of Bigfoot in that area. I think that's just the path Bigfoot uses to get between the Rockies and the Sierras. Long history there. If you see what it looks like, it's pretty rugged country. There's, is it 270,000 square miles of forest there? So, big area. So, the first thing that got me into this is the footprint casts. This cast in particular, well, it's one of them that are in particular. This cast here was taken by Paul Freeman in the 90s in the Blue Mountains, where I'm from. But what's interesting about this cast is the fact it was done in soft silt in mud. And if you look really closely in the little toe here, you can actually see the dermal ridges. You can see the fingerprints in the toe. The fingerprints from this cast and several others were sent to the FBI fingerprint expert. They actually, I had a friend of mine, my squashing partner was also deputy sheriff, and he put it into CODIS just to see what happens, see if Bigfoot was wanted. But every time they put it in or tested it, they found out it doesn't match human patterns. Non-human primate.
You have a question over here.
I can't see past the lights, so.
See you now?
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering, when you were saying the Blue Mountains were like a bridge between like the Cascades and the Rockies, are you suggesting that Bigfoot is migratory?
Oh, yes.
Why would it migrate?
Because food.
Okay.
So, I'll actually get to that a little bit later too. But anyway, these fingerprints don't match human patterns, and they also don't match primate patterns. They don't match ape patterns. They check them against chimpanzees, gorillas, lemurs. They don't match those patterns either. So we have evidence here of a non-classified primate in the fingerprints. The next one is these prints here. These prints here were taken in snow. These were taken in the late 60s in a place called Bosburg, Washington. Washington, I say it with an R. Anyway, Bosburg is about the center of the state of Washington, up north, really close to the Canadian border. 15-inch prints. What's really interesting about these prints, though, since they were taken in snow, they found 1,089 of these in a row. But the weird part is it's called cripple foot. Because the other cast looks like this, the other foot. So if you were to take the bone structure in this foot and draw it out, that's what it'd look like. So what happened to this guy?
You hurt himself?
So we took the bone structure here, drew it out, showed just the drawing of the bones to a podiatrist and asked him, what's wrong with this guy's foot? And the guy looked at it and instantaneously said, it's clubfoot. It's from a cyst in the spinal cord that happens from birth. And he said, if you were to diagnose this without an x-ray, it's very simple. The person will have two big nodules on the outside of the foot. There's two big nodules on the outside of this foot. So if this footprint was was faked, it was faked by a podiatrist 1,089 times. That's what's interesting about this. So that was another bit of proof to me. And the next one is this. This is from the Patterson film. Roger Patterson took this cast. Not this one, this is a copy of it. But Roger Patterson took this cast of Patty, the Bigfoot, the famous Bigfoot in that film where walking across. This here is very interesting if you look at it this way. But there's a lot of science if you look at it this way. There's something different about this cast. Trying to remember my next slide. It's how it's shaped. If you look at the difference between this and a human foot, there's some stark contrast. One is an arch. There isn't one here. Bigfoot doesn't have an arch in their foot. Let me see if my next slide. Yeah. And that's because of the bone structure of the foot. If you draw the bone structure out in this, you notice a couple different things. One, our toes and the calcaneus and right here, because of our arch, are all pressed together. Notice how these are spread out more? Can you see? Notice how these are spread out more than ours? And Bigfoot has a longer calcaneus, so it looks like instead of a human, our ankle will attach here. In Bigfoot, it's attached here. And you can see that in this cast because it's thicker here, but it thins out a little bit right here. That's because without an arch, without an arch, this here is where the foot bends. It's called a mid-tarsal break right there. Our foot doesn't bend in the middle. It would if we didn't have an arch. So as this steps, it steps here and the whole front of the foot bends and then it lifts the foot up. So instead of rocking off our toes, this rocks off the whole front of the foot. And you can see that by the way this is set. You got a thickness here. You got the mid-tarsal break. It's a little thicker here and a little thicker in the toes because as the weight comes up, it pushes down right there, and then it lifts the whole foot up. So there's actual science to this. It's not a flat board because it doesn't bend in the middle. And this shows the difference right there. So you can see as the foot bends in the middle here, the whole front of the foot stays on the ground and we come off our toes. Also in the Bigfoot videos, you'll notice something else. In the proper Bigfoot videos, in the ones that we deem real, Bigfoot walks different than a human. You can actually draw a line on the video above its head, and you'll notice that the head doesn't go above or below the line. In other words, it's what's called a compliant gait. It's smooth when it walks. When we walk, we hit our heel, we vault over our hips, and take our next step and hit our heel. In other words, we bounce when we walk, right? Bigfoot, since their foot bends in the middle, and they never lock their knees, if you watch the videos, they step flat-footed, rock, bend their foot flat-footed. That's why they have a 5-foot gait. So by watching the videos, you can tell it doesn't walk like a person. And why would you have to have that big, wide foot and that long foot? Well, you need that when you weigh 800 pounds. to keep from sinking. And the way they walk, the way that their walk has developed is because they're walking up and down steep hills over rough terrain. And we don't do that. We walk on pavement. Man, we trip over things that are, 2 inches high. Because that's my wife.
I don't need 2 inches to trip.
I don't either.
Anyway, and there are some other hard evidence. It's in the photos. Here is Patty, and this is stabilized so you can see how it works. If you notice, there's something very interesting. If you look right at this beginning part right here, what do you see? You see the whole bottom of its foot vertical to the ground whenever it lifts its foot off the ground. See that? How many people, when you're walking, do you actually see the bottom of their foot? We walk like that every time we step. And like I said, I messed up. Okay. And if you notice, the head doesn't bounce at all. This film was taken in 1967 on a video camera with film in it. Nothing digital back then. Something else in this film, that this has been the most diagnosed film in the world, but you can also see the muscle flexing in the arms, in the legs when it walks. So there's that film. There's also this film. Now, this is really rough because he was running trying to get the video. So even stabilized is kind of rough. But you can see the creature comes out of the woods here. But again, you can draw a line and its head never bounces other than it's going downhill. But that creature there was actually this footprint. So he got the footprints from that one too.
When was that one filmed?
This is filmed in the Blue Mountains, where I'm from, in the Umatilla National Forest. This is filmed in the 90s. And I'll get to stuff later, but now here's another one. Now this one has not been closely verified yet. This next film. Just got a quick brief look at it. But what I've found so far, I've taken this frame by frame and looked at it. There's no bounce in it either. And there's that stomping walk when it walks.
And it's going about 25 miles an hour.
And it's going about 25 miles an hour because that was a four-wheeler filming it as it went by.
Where was this filmed?
This was filmed about 4 weeks ago on the other side of Lincoln, just a few miles from here. So.
Man, Bigfoot gets around fast.
Yeah. So.
The other side of Lincoln?
Yeah.
Wow.
At what's the lake, Dale? Dopsy Lake. Sislodopsis Lake, just a few miles from here.
That's awesome.
We tried to find it.
So, and then there's this historic photo. Just kidding, it's not historic. Did you see the Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Eye, nose, mouth, shoulder, peeking at you. I took that photo 4 years ago in the Blue Mountains, 15 miles from where the Freeman film was taken. Little story, I was hiking through the forest, actually looking for Bigfoot. I had a gentleman with me that I had just met that day. It was his birthday. His daughter, he was always loved Bigfoot. His daughter contacted me, and for a birthday present, she wanted me to take him out in the woods looking for Bigfoot. So I said for a birthday present. So I took him out. We went hiking. I just met him a few hours. I had just recently got 3 or 4 reports in this certain area, so we decided to go there. Took him out. We were hiking the trail. We smelled something very bad. Bigfoot smell bad. I think some of them do, not all of them. I think just the teenage boy ones.
Of course.
Of
course.
But they smell really bad.
Did it smell like 57 varieties of axe
Yeah.
layered on top of each other?
Yeah. No, it's kind of like, I'd say wet dog, skunk, garbage, onions, all together. Anyway, I had smelt that smell. I had never smelt it before in my life. After doing this for 25 years, I'd never been close to one. I told Don, the guy with me, let's keep walking down the trail and see if the smell goes away or if it follows us, because we were on a muddy trail. I thought maybe I can get some prints. So we walked away, the smell went away, it didn't follow us. So we turned around and went back real quick. And when we got back to where the smell was the most pungent, I heard off into the woods this sound. So we're looking all around in the woods through the brush trying to figure out where that sound came from. And we couldn't find it. So I went back at it. It growled back at me, and that's when I saw it. It was standing in this little opening, looking at me doing this, walking back and forth. I immediately grabbed my camera, took a bunch of the most blurry photos you could ever find,
Of course.
because it's Bigfoot. Because my camera kept trying to focus on the limbs in front of it, not the creature behind it. So that was my first and last close-up encounter with Bigfoot. That was about 4 years ago. So here is another thing that convinced me that Bigfoot is real. I talked a little bit about my Native American cultural studies. This pictograph right here is called Hairy Man. This, in real life, is 8 feet tall in a cave. Next to it, there is a mama Bigfoot and a baby Afro Bigfoot. They got an Afro on it. I don't know why. They've got footprints. They've got a hunting party with a man down. That means this is a water spring. So they're basically given directions where they saw this thing. This is another one. This one here, you see the Native American on a horse, and this large creature with big feet and long arms sitting next to it. This one's 1,200 years old. This one's 600 years old. Then you have these. These are masks that are over 500 years old. How did a Native American know what an ape looked like 500 years ago? What's interesting with these pictographs is they have normal stuff. Hunting party, deer and Bigfoot.
And big hands.
And big hands. And this is how we know this is 1,200 years old? Because these two symbols right here, those are atlatls. If you're not familiar with what an atlatl is, that was the technology before the bow and arrow. It was a long stick that they would take an arrow or a spear and hook to, and they could get more distance out of it if you hook it to the end of a long stick and throw it. That was the technology 1,200 years ago, and then the bows came out. So if you look at these masks, there's something very similar in all of them. One, you've got a large brow ridge, deep set eyes, little bulbous nose, and a very flat, straight mouth on all of them. Except for the one that's going, ooh, okay? If you compare them to the Patterson film and the photo that I took, you've got deep set eyes, so dark, they're back in, you got a deep brow ridge, a little bulbous nose, and a very straight across mouth in all of them. These are 500-year-old photographs of Bigfoot from the Native American standpoint. Now let's talk about some more archaeology. This is Gigantopithecus. If anyone's ever heard of that? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Gigantopithecus is an 8-foot tall, upright walking primate found in China. The skeletons are roughly 10,000 years old. So far, they found a whole bunch of teeth and a few jawbones because the Chinese were grinding the teeth up and the bones up for medicine. So what's interesting is these things are 10,000 years old, found in Asia. So 10,000 years ago, there was this landmass called Beringia, the Bering Strait, because of the ice age, it dropped the water level so you could walk from here to Russia on dry land. Where were they? And where were we 10,000 years ago? We were on the edge of the Bering Strait. Same place this was when the Chinese came across here and became Native Americans. In case you didn't know that, all Native Americans are originally Asian origin. Okay? So, here's my theory. Remember this in school?
Yeah.
Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
It's BS. That's not how it worked. Here's how evolution worked. This is the oldest group of humans that we have found, the Ardipithecus group. Then from there, there's the Australopithecus group, the Pantheropodus group, and then the Homo group, which is what we're in. So that's our family tree. But if you look at the tree more like a waterfall, there was a common ancestor somewhere up here. And as the water comes down, it spreads out. As it goes to different places, it has to adapt to different situations. So it spreads out, and sometimes it comes back together, well, all the time, it comes back together at the end. So there was a primate up here that was the beginning, and we haven't found that yet. But from this branched off the Ardipithecus group, the Australopithecus group, the Homo group, and then also chimpanzees, gorillas, everything else. Chimps and monkeys we didn't evolve from them. They just evolved differently from us, from the same ancestors. So if you take that tree and put it together, this is more like what it's looked like. So if we put primate apes over here on this branch, they went this way, and then this group went this way, and then we're down here at the end where things are coming back together. This is our group. Here's the interesting thing. This is the last 4 million years, so it's been a long time. It's been a while. Okay, the last 4 million years, oops, What am I doing? I just pressed the wrong button.
You never do that.
What?
You never press the wrong button.
Yes, I do. Okay. Now I gotta.
You do not be Squatch America if wrong buttons were-
He was on a roll though. He's doing good.
I know.
See?
Falling asleep. 'Cause it's like so-
Yeah. You haven't had any even know.
Okay, so here we are.
Almost nothing.
So in the last 4 million years, this is where we came from. Now, what's interesting is in the last, third of a million years or so, you've got Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthal, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, and Homo floresiensis and Homo nadali right here. And if you notice something interesting, we all existed together at the same time. Didn't know that, did you? You thought it was one to the other, to the other, to the other. No, depending on the area, you develop differently. If you're in arid places, you develop a certain way. If you're, in a rainforest, you develop a different way. If you're up in the snowy area, you develop it like these two did. So, Homo neanderthal and Homo sapiens, actually, I'm going to say Homo floresiensis developed after us. By the way, they're a younger species of human than us. They're called the hobbit. They're only about this tall. But they went extinct, maybe. Before we did. But Homo neanderthal, like your Neanderthal, the common caveman, you think of in the movies, right? And Homo sapiens, they're the only two that are still left alive. And you're like, wait, I haven't seen a Neanderthal around. But actually you have. You're looking at one right in front of you right now. If you have French origins, 3% of your DNA is Neanderthal. So that guy that looks like a caveman is a caveman. Neanderthal did not go extinct. We bred them out. They are in us. 3% of all French people, basically, in that area. 3% of your DNA, since they were able to find the DNA of Neanderthal. The geneticists looked at it and said, wait a minute, I've seen that pattern before. And they found out that most French people are 3% Neanderthal. We bred them out. So they still exist, technically. Okay? So what if we add Homo gigantopithecus into this? And they're still around. So what if that gigantopithecus creature developed into what we know as Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch? Here's the differences. This is a gorilla. What the difference between a gorilla and a human is one, see how long that skull is? It's because the neck attachment's clear back here. And that's because it walks on all fours, and its head has to be up like this. When you walk on two legs, you have a narrower skull because your attachment is down lower in your neck, and your head, you walk like this, and your head's held like this. See the difference between Gigantopithecus? The difference between a primate ape, gorilla, primate human, Homo sapien, is that they walk upright, they walk on all fours. They have big canine teeth, they don't. So Gigantopithecus has what? A small skull, so they walked upright, and very small canine teeth. So does that make Bigfoot an ape or a human?
Both.
It makes them us.
Yeah.
So, my theory is Bigfoot is just another undiscovered human walking this planet, which is which brings me to the theory where I'm going to say I don't think Bigfoot will be classified in our lifetimes anyway. And I think it's not to be a government conspiracist, but I think the government has a lot to do with it. Because what would happen if we were to prove there's another human species on the planet?
Kill it. They go
No,
back
do they
and
get
search-
voting rights? How much of the forest do we have to give to them because it's their property? Do they have their own country?
We'll just make a treaty with them.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of like weird stuff that happened. So that's my theory. So what is Bigfoot? Is it a myth, an alien, a forest spirit? I've heard all these. North American great ape or another species of primitive humans? Do you know what I think? I don't freaking know. As a scientist, I can't hear it say my theory's true because you know why? I don't have a Bigfoot to show you on a table, or alive. Either way. So, if somebody tells you they know what Bigfoot is, they're lying to you. Until we answer all these questions and fill all the boxes in, we don't really know. Here's my other thing. Where's mainstream scientists on this subject? There's only 2 or 3 that I know of that does this research. Dr. Jeff Meldrum is one of them. I don't know where they're at. Do you know why? Because they get paid by grants. You only get grants for things that you know you can prove, because that way you get more grants, right? And they don't study things that are hoaxed. That's another hard thing that we have to put up with in this particular thing. It's hoaxing. For instance, going around the internet right now, and I've got sent this photo probably 70 times in the last 3 weeks. See that awesome photo?
Yeah.
Do you see the photo down here? Kind of looks the same, doesn't it? Oops. I'm pushing the wrong button. See this photo? Same photo. I had a kid at a Bigfoot festival show me that photo 4 years ago and say, my grandpa in Oregon took this photo. And then recently on the internet, I got a whole bunch of these sent to me, and you probably can't read these, but this is the same photo, and according to this one, it was claimed it was taken a week ago. And this story says it was taken a week ago in Washington State. And then this one says it was taken a week ago in Florida. And this one was verified by the Sheriff's Department in Salton, Washington.
Gets around fast.
It gets around, all right? So this is a problem. We get a lot of people in costumes. We get a lot of people just taking photos off the internet, making digital photos, sending to us. So in this day and age, photos like the photo I took is worthless, to be honest with you, because of hoaxing. I know what I saw. I know this creature was looking right at me. I know I smelt it. I heard it. I saw it. I got a picture of it, but my picture is actually worthless because of hoaxing. All right. There's also soft evidence out here, and it's from those. These are things I like to call interesting but not conclusive, because photos, sounds, hearing stories and legends, And tree structures are all things that are highly suspect. There are some really good sounds, and I've recorded sounds. I admit it. I found tree structures, but they don't prove anything unless you see the Bigfoot making sound, unless you see the Bigfoot making the tree structure, because you can't prove it was a Bigfoot. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're interesting but not conclusive. So our job as researchers, I'm going to teach you how to do some science real quick. One, document everything. Literally. If you find anything, document it. And come up with new theories. When you find like a print or something, you got to survey everything. You got to keep people out of the area so you don't mess up. Because anytime someone goes into the area or comes out of the area, you always take something with you or you bring something in with you. It's just like CSI, you know. So you don't want to transfer evidence, and you want to take photos of everything. And then you want to answer all the, you know, who, what, why, how, when, where questions and document it. And then you want to photograph everything. Close up, far away, with tape measures, without tape measures. And I'll tell you, and then you want to do a sketch or a diagram of the area. This is stuff we do in archaeology, basically, when we find stuff. To give you an idea, when I took that photo, after I saw that, we spent 3 days there. I did send the birthday guy home. but I spent 3 days there with lasers and tape measures and tall poles and everything to find out where this creature was. And after my 3 days of surveying, this is what we found out. Where I was sitting on the hill, it was 165 feet to the log that was laying on the ground. The creature was 44 feet past the log because we found its footprints. So if we took the angle from where I was standing, shot a laser through the trees, figured out that this creature was 6 foot tall. And the hillside next to it, we found 3 15-inch footprints with 3 9-inch footprints next to them. Now here's part of the story I didn't tell you. I was taking pictures of this creature while it was looking at me. We heard the whistle off to our left in the woods, a really loud whistle. One I'd never heard before. Almost sounded like an elk bugle, but there weren't any elk in the area. And it wasn't the time of year that elks bugle, but it was just kind of a loud, high-pitched whistle.
Which is a primate feature.
Yeah.
Which we have.
And actually, we played the whistle for
Dr. Hansen.
Dr. Hansen, and when he listened to it, he said, "This isn't a whistle. This is made by a voice. It's not lips together. It's actual vocal cord." So when the whistle happened, the creature turned and walked away. So this was Junior. Mom and Dad was in the woods somewhere that I didn't see. They whistled and said, "Leave the people alone," and go away. And that's another theory I have. Most people see Bigfoot as when a juvenile messes up. So, so to give you an idea, that log right there is that log on my little diagram. And that face back there was actually 44 feet behind that log. So it was a long ways back there. So document everything, come up with new theories, and then prove yourself wrong. Seriously, prove yourself wrong. If you can't prove yourself wrong, that meant you prove yourself right. And then try it again and again to reproduce your outcomes, reproduce your results. Okay, here's all our personal finds. 1, the photograph. 2, actually, this was a year before that in the Blue Mountains also, we found this 14-inch footprint, which I did not have my casting material with me. And it was a long drive home, like 2 hours. So at the time I had a job, so I had to go home. It was a weekend. I had to go home, work a week, and then get back out there to take the week. After the week went by, the grass had grown up through it and destroyed it. I couldn't find it. This is I got that cast sitting right over there. This is the 9-inch cast. And if you look, there's a toe,
Yeah.
heel. That's a 15-inch print next to it.
You never find any scat?
Scat doesn't last long in the woods. There have been people who found scat.
Scat gets devoured by other things.
Yeah, actually dogs, coyotes eat scat. But there has been scat found. They said it was about 2 inches around and 25 inches long, little long. Okay.
Warning.
So these things are herbivorous or omnivorous?
They're omnivorous. We have found deer kills. Actually, we found 3 deer in a tree. Cougars don't do that. We found 3 deer. There's limbs sticking out of the tree. We found the deer laying across the limbs like this. 3 of them stacked up on top of each other. 8 foot up a tree. There's a thing, if you look at their body is longer than ours. So Dr. Jeff seems to think they have a longer digestive tract than we do. So they can eat like rougher vegetation than we can and get more nutrients out of it because it's in their gut longer. And this is another 15-inch print that was up the hill from that 15-inch print. I don't know if you see the toes here and the heel down. This is a tree structure we found. Now, like I said, I don't usually think tree structures are a thing because of snowfall and trees break in and that sort of thing, high winds, whatever. But there are a few cases that I've found. One, when you see a tree pulled out of the ground, turned upside down and stabbed back in the ground. I found that a couple times. Snowfall doesn't do that. High winds don't do that. That's one. And secondly, this one here was really interesting. It's a tree about 6 inches, well, about 8 inches around actually. Twisted off, bent over, and other tree limbs stuck in it to make this nest thing. So that was interesting, but not conclusive. Didn't find any footprints or hairs or anything. We checked it really good. But then there's this footprint that we found, like I said, in site number whatever up here in June. You can see there's toes here. Now this was in really soupy mud, so it had been washed out, so it's not pristine. But what's interesting is we found another footprint almost 5 feet behind it. In the gravel, you can see a faint imprint of the toes. So what happened is it had stepped into the campground behind Dale's camper and then stepped back this way, away from it, once it stepped in the mud.
5 minutes.
Okay.
How many feet from this spot here was that picture taken? How far back?
What, the one,
The footprint. The footprint.
it's if you go up this road here on the tent side, just about 50 yards past the bathroom up there.
Wow.
So I hope this works. Does it work? Kind of hear it. Where's the volume on that? Shoot, that didn't work. I don't know if you heard that. Faintly.
Probably what you hear.
So how does a creature like this hunt? I mean, it doesn't have claws like a bear. It doesn't have...
It has hands. Okay, there's a video that was taken in Georgia a few years ago where a guy saw a Bigfoot taking a deer holding its head under the water, drowning it.
Oh, wow.
The ones we found in that tree all had their necks broke.
Neck It can throw.
If these things are 8 feet tall, you got a 5-foot stride, it takes you very few steps to go a long ways.
Yeah.
So I imagine they are very fast.
And they can pitch rocks pretty well.
Yeah, but I think they're very fast, and they actually can run deer down and grab them and break their necks because they're very strong.
We have a question on YouTube.
Okay.
Says, now this is from Mr. Lurks a lot.
Okay.
I kind of like that tag. Now, the Bering Bridge theory is okay, but all the native tribes and Aboriginal people say that hairy man was everywhere already when they got there. Australia, Himalayas, Europe, and Russia. Do you have a response to that?
No, they could very well be here already. Totally agree with that statement. I know the Native Americans seem to believe that it's always been here, but if they came across with them, that could be a thing. And there's another interesting thing why Bigfoot avoids us so much is what I'm thinking, if they've been with humans for as long as they have, a million years or so, they know what we're like. When the Native Americans came across the Bering Strait into America, in the first 10,000 years, they wiped out 4 species of animals. So, you know,
You're smart.
they look at us as like destroyers, basically. That's why they avoid us so much. So, speaking of avoiding,
4 minutes.
okay, good. I'm wrapping up. All right, time on target. That's how we're going to prove this stuff. We need people doing research. Mainstream science aren't going to do it. Us amateurs have to. So, you are sitting in the North Maine woods. I'm going to prove something to you really interesting here. Look, that's around you right now. The North Maine woods consist of 3.5 million acres of trees. 3.5 million acres of trees. So let me say, people will say, well, there have been loggers out here forever, since the 1800s. That's right, but what if there was, say, 1,000 loggers in the woods? Let's say there was 10,000 loggers in the woods. In fact, let's be generous and say there's 100,000 loggers in the woods right now. If each one of those loggers stood in 1 acre, you take 100,000 loggers divided by 3.5 million, they're covering 0.002% of these woods. That leaves 3.49
Whatever.
whatever million acres of trees that nobody's in. If we add hikers and hunters to the mix, say we had 10,000 or 100,000 of each of those, we still only 0.006% of the woods are being covered. So think about that. And what's the chances if there's, say, 1,000 Bigfoot in the North Maine woods? What is your chance of walking across one?
Got a chance of winning the lottery.
Yeah, 0. The reason, I'll tell you, the reason I got the photo I got is because, 1, I'm in a highly trafficked Bigfoot area. 2, I had 5 reports from 5 different people telling me they saw something, heard something, smelled something in the same area at the same time that didn't know each other. I just happened to get very lucky. And that's my first sighting after 25 years of looking for these things. That's why we don't find them. They also say, why don't we find bones? Well, Dr. Grover Krantz from Washington State University put up a $25,000 reward for anybody who could bring him a set of bear bones that had died naturally in the woods. He never had to pay. Bones don't last long, especially in moist forest areas.
And so all this leads us to our purpose as Squatch America.
What is that?
That is to investigate the unexplained.
Not to explain the uninvestigated. Thank you.
Do you think sightings are increasing in Maine, in the Northeast? They seem to be increasing. I thought it could be to do with global warming out west,
Yeah.
high temperatures in the States, etc. Are they moving further north, northeast?
I don't
The
think so.
wildfires they're having out there?
Well, I think wildfires have a lot to do with it. They probably move.
Right.